Today, I'm here to challenge you to capture your world. But in order to capture your world, you need to be bold. But in order for you to be bold, you need to make a resolution to be great. It's not enough to be good. We live in a globally competitive world, so you need to make a resolution to be great. A planet is a celestial being that is not able to generate its own light, but it is able to absorb light to sustain life. Earth is part of a galaxy of planets, but none of the planets are able to generate their own light. But Earth is unique in the sense that it is able to absorb light and then sustain life in the process. My next question then becomes, is the moon a star? As far as I'm concerned, the moon is not a star, and I researched this because I'm not a science student, so I had to go out to Google and research this thing. And I found out that the moon is not a star, it is a satellite of a planet. And what a satellite does, it revolves around the planet and it reflects the glory and the light of a star. What makes a star is the ability to generate your own light. So a ball of gas burning a million years away is able to generate enough energy that it dissipates it in the form of heat and in the form of light, right? And right at the bottom I say that that is a quality to emulate as a leader. I and a long line of other people who have come here are on a trajectory to take over the world. But as we take over the world, we need to be people who generate light. And light in this case, I liken to value. You need to be able to generate value for society. Because if you simply go out there and you acquire resources, but you generate no value for society, you will leave no legacy. Stephen Covey says every individual has 4 desires: to live, to learn, to love, and to leave a legacy. Now, what is holding us back from becoming stars in our lives? I will tell you what I think, and I will give you 3 slides of 3 challenges that is holding us back from being stars in our lives. The first one is that we live in a country and we live in a continent and we live in a world where the celebration of mediocrity has become commonplace. An academic example: when I first went to university, I would encounter situations where if a student spends 7 days studying for a test and gets a 90%, they would get less glory than somebody who studies overnight and gets 50%. Somehow we appreciate it as genius to exercise as little effort as possible to comply. The second thing is the culture of sufficiency and half measures instead of excellence and craftsmanship. Now, sufficiency is the ability to move yourself from A to B. But excellence and craftsmanship is the ability to be able to move from A to B efficiently and comfortably. If your approach to life is that you just want to qualify to write the exam, you will do just enough work to qualify to write the exam. And when you get to the exam, you will do a monument of work to try and comply. So what I want to challenge you is to have an attitude of excellence and craftsmanship, which says that my bare minimum is the best that is required, where a first is my standard of greatness. Now, I want to say that my marks aren't a glowing example of what I'm talking about, because I made the error of going into the wrong career. But the one thing I can tell you is that progress is not measured by how long it takes you to get your degree, but it's measured by how serious you are in finding your passion. Because in the area of your passion is the area of your greatest productivity. I'm not saying that if you get 60%, you're not committed to your work, but I'm saying have a commitment to producing excellence. The pursuit of excellence is a barometer of success as opposed to self-mastery and abundance. We've come to a place where excess has become a barometer of success instead of self-mastery and abundance. Now, what do we need to do to rediscover? What do we need to rediscover about ourselves to save the future? We created to be trailblazing comets. Remember earlier on we said that a star is a celestial being that is able to generate its own light. The difference between a star and a comet is that a comet is a star with a destination. So what are the beacons to guide me as I navigate my path as a rising star? Now I challenge you and I say there are 8. The first one is initiative. In order for us to be able to change society, we cannot be people who are reactive when it comes to problems that are facing our nation. We need to be people who are able to exercise initiative even when you don't know all the answers. The second one is courage. Now, courage goes back to the statement I made at the beginning about boldness. And the courage I'm talking about here, just as a start, is having the courage to rise above mediocrity. A pigeon flies at a certain altitude and an eagle flies at a certain altitude. Now, you will find that at times in society, you will feel crowded out by pigeons. Now, as young graduates, I want to encourage you that when you find yourself crowded out by pigeons, flex your wings and soar to a higher altitude, because that is the level that you were created to fly at. The third one is vision. Now, vision is the ability to visualize the dream state, which is the secret weapon of self-leadership. The fourth principle, or the fourth beacon, is faith. Faith is the substance of things hoped for. And faith is linked to hope. And hope makes it worthwhile to live in a world where sometimes evil overtakes us. Dr. Malinga is one of the humblest people I know, because I spent time with him and we used to eat at the same dining hall while he was a student. And the fact that he ended up being a CEO today tells me as a young person that it's possible for good people to finish first. We live in an economy at times where you feel as if you need to change your character in order to accommodate the rules that are required for you to get to the top. You may be behind in your courses, you may be falling behind in anything that you're studying in terms of your career plan and where your peers are, but I want to tell you, in terms of achieving what God predestined you to achieve, there is still time. The sixth beacon is resilience. Now, resilience is the ability to sustain your courage in the face of failure and challenges and setbacks. The seventh one is selflessness. Ours was not for personal glory nor distinction, but for a noble cause of our time, the liberation of the people of South Africa and the entire humanity. So what I'm trying to say is that selflessness allows you to understand that what matters more than the needs of one individual or organization is the needs of the collective, and prioritizing the needs of the collective. And the majority of our country is living in abject poverty, which is why I'm saying we cannot afford to produce graduates who aspire to be planets. Neither can we afford to produce graduates who aspire to be satellites and reflect the content that's out there. We need people to generate value. The eighth beacon is commitment to a cause that is larger than yourself. I've said a lot of things. The first thing I said is that a planet is a celestial being like yourself that absorbs light but generates no light of its own. I also said that a moon is a celestial being that revolves around the planet, but it reflects light. Now, in terms of leadership, a planet represents what we in management thought call transactional leadership. Transactional leadership is based on an understanding that if you do A for me, I will do B for you. But the reason why it's limited is because we come into situations where we need to help people who have nothing to give us in return. And that is the folly of transactional leadership. And that is why we cannot leave our future or the future of our kids in people who think in a transactional way. Secondly, I spoke to you about the moon. And I said that the moon represents a form of leadership where you do not generate your own light, but you reflect light. And what that represents is transformational leadership. Transformational leadership is the ability to reflect light that affects life on the planet. If you know that the moon or the lunar calendar affects the waves on the beach, you will see that the moon as a representation of leadership is transformational leadership, which can change lives on earth. But there is a higher level of leadership even than transformational leadership. And that is represented by a star which generates its own light. And by the way, when a star generates light, it expects nothing in return, or it receives nothing in return from the rest of the galaxy. And that represents what is called servant leadership. Servant leadership is a form of leadership where you place your own needs ahead of the community that you lead. A servant leader is not a doormat. A servant leader is somebody who is intimately aware of his environment and prioritizes the needs of the collective ahead of the needs of the individual. In order for us to achieve these things, we need to have people who are committed to mastering their craft. It's not enough for you to worry about compliance. That is not enough. That's wonderful, but it's not enough. You need to master your craft where you become not only an employee in a company, but you become a member of an industry. So that when they speak of mathematics in South Africa, they say, but have you consulted Dr. Matutu? What does she think in this matter? You need to become an authority in the area of your passion. And the last thing I want to say to you is that never, ever, ever benchmark yourself against someone who is not the best at what they do. In your walk in life, as a student, as a young person who's working, as an entrepreneur, there are moments when you will fall. It's inevitable. But if you remain upward bound, when you fall, you will fall on your knees. But if you take the road that is easy, if you take shortcuts, and you always want something that's going to expend the least amount of energy, when you do fall in those situations, you will fall on your head. And then he said to me, by the way, falling on your knees is not the worst outcome for humanity. Because while you're on your knees, you have the opportunity to introspect, to recalibrate your instrument, and then to begin again. I thank you.